to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. There are multiple different types of PCOS, and many times we think there's only one, and we follow this generalized protocol. We're going to be talking about the different types so you can see which type you are, and then really how to take targeted diet and lifestyle changes, supplement recommendations that can help you on your journey as you prepare for pregnancy success. Let's go. Hey, Dr. Potter, excited to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. It's wonderful to be here.
Awesome. So let's first start with how you came, your journey, and really how you came to do this work.
Yes. So I've been in practice now for about a decade. And over all those years, I started seeing more and more women with PCOS. And I was hearing a very similar story from them. Things like, well, I went in, I talked to my other doctor, and they just told me, well, I think you have PCOS. Here's a pamphlet and a prescription. And then I left and then they give me, are there any other options? And, yes, of course, there are tons of other options. And so just seeing this pattern of women feeling dismissed and unheard by providers that they're seeing, that's when I realized, something has to be done here. And so then throughout that, I created my PCOS fertility protocol. And now I work with women across the country, helping them optimize their fertility with PCOS.
Great. Yeah. So we have done a number of podcast episodes, probably maybe a couple of years ago on PCOS, different types. So definitely the listeners can go and check out some of those. But I haven't done an episode in a while. So I thought it was great to have someone come on and talk about this again with us because we're focusing primarily on diminished ovarian reserve and premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH and high FSH. And so, but there still are people, like 60% of infertility or people on the fertility journey may be experiencing PCOS. So let's talk about kind of what are you seeing with patients as far as PCOS and fertility? What are some of the themes you're seeing there?
Yeah. So what I see with women is that they are some are getting loosely diagnosed with PCOS. They're having that typical picture where they're gaining weight really easily. They have the acne, some unwanted hair growth. And then they're told, okay, just stick on your birth control. And then they want to get pregnant and they're coming off their birth control and their periods are all over the place and they just can't figure out how to help their bodies ovulate, and they don't know where to turn because the information out there is just one, that they can't get pregnant and there is no treatment, which is really heartbreaking. And so they're typically feeling really lost at this time, which is so sad.
Yeah, and it is interesting, right? We see this all the time when I ask people, why did you go on birth control? And it wasn't typically for prevention. It's usually, I had heavy periods, I had irregular periods, I had acne, I had some health issues, and the doctor just passes the pill across the table to them, not really looking at to see, first of all, getting the root cause of, addressing healing opportunities as to why that's, imbalanced in the first place. And then second of all, then also the side effects of going on the birth control, which then can predispose you to food sensitivities and gut infections and, impact your health in negative ways. And sometimes people go on it and immediately will feel, anxious or depressed or something. And they just then take another pill to then offset the side effects. And no one really goes back to a way like, oh, wait, it could be the pill. And we've done many episodes on birth control on the podcast and that post-birth control pill syndrome, which I think was coined by Dr. Jolene Brighton. But it's really interesting with that birth control being a first line of defense.
Yeah, right. Particularly when a woman is already interested in getting pregnant and her periods are irregular, it's not, the focus isn't with other providers on getting those periods regular and getting that ovulation. Really, those women are getting information like, well, just stay on your birth control. And then right when you want to get pregnant, let's get off the birth control. And that's not making sense in their bodies hormonally. And it's not helpful on the fertility journey.
Yeah, let's just talk about the different types of PCOS, because sometimes people think it's like, oh my goodness, I've got to have insulin resistance and perhaps weight gain, which seems to be like the standard one, and anything else would not even be considered. So what are the different types of PCOS?
Yeah, so it's really surprising to a lot of people that, you don't have to have insulin resistance to have PCOS, and you also don't have to have ovaries on your cysts. And so it's really important to get a diagnosis of PCOS, a proper diagnosis, and then take the next step to figure out what type you have, because the type really helps get to the root cause. And so there's four types of PCOS that are typically seen, and insulin resistance is one, and it is the most common because that insulin issue with PCOS, it is acting on the ovaries, not allowing the ovaries to do what they're supposed to be doing. So, getting that insulin under control is super important. So, there's also inflammatory PCOS. And typically, what we see with that is you're going to have an autoimmune condition as well as the PCOS. A thyroid autoimmune condition, Hashimoto's, is common. You could have something else like rheumatoid arthritis, and aches and pains in your body that just feel not right, that, and then also like gut disturbances, that's a big sign of inflammation happening in the body. A third type of PCOS is the adrenal PCOS, and so that stress piece that's impacting this whole cascade of hormones in your body. And I like to preface this type by saying, it's not that you just have to go reduce your stress, get more sleep, and everything's going to open up for you, right? Because that's incredibly unhelpful. But no, what we're talking about with this type is that literally we want to look at the hormones that your adrenal glands are excreting, your stress hormone cortisol, your DHEA. Typically, we look at DHEA sulfate, and see physiologically what's happening in your body, what your stress response is doing, and how that is then acting on your insulin levels, your blood sugar, your thyroid, your progesterone levels. So that's the adrenal PCOS. And then there's the post pill PCOS, which is one of the most common that I see in my practice. And the hallmark of that type is someone who has had regular periods throughout puberty and, for however long until they start taking birth control pills. And they're on the birth control for, it could be a couple cycles or up to a few years or 10 years. And then they come off of the birth control, and all of a sudden, periods are irregular, they're gaining lots of weight, and that PCOS is showing up in their bodies.
Yeah, it's interesting with the adrenal piece, where like we see this with our clients a lot too, with the adrenal dysfunction, where it's just like a cascade of like the more cortisol than the DHEA, and people impacting all parts of their fertility, their health, and the thyroid piece as well. So we see the thyroid, the adrenals, and we actually with premature ovarian insufficiency and diminished ovarian reserve, we also see insulin resistance. So sort of these themes that kind of carry across different diagnoses. That's why it's important not to just focus myopically on the diagnosis and follow these generalized recommendations, which, could have helped someone, but, are they helpful for you? It's like looking at the big picture.
Yes, exactly.
And so what are some of the myths that you're seeing around PCOS?
Well, one of the biggest things that women are hearing is there is no treatment for PCOS, which is really hard. What happens is a woman goes in, talks to her provider, and is told, "Well, you probably have PCOS. Here's a pamphlet and a prescription. You're probably going to have a hard time getting pregnant. Good luck," kind of thing. And then, they might be given metformin, which is very common. And then they say, if that doesn't work, then you're going to be sent to do some more, fertility drugs or procedures. And that is just, it's so hard because it's missing out on this whole big piece of your health that can be figured out like what is happening with your fertility, what is the root cause of your fertility. And that's why it's really important to figure out your type of PCOS, so then you can understand, okay, these are kind of the core factors of what's contributing to the PCOS. And then also understanding, what are these other systems in my body that are contributing to the infertility piece. And because it's not just about the lady parts, right? It's so much about other hormone systems in the body. And so, yes, many providers say, well, there is no treatment for PCOS because there's no one pill that fixes everything with PCOS. And really, it shouldn't be that way because PCOS is expressed so differently in different people's bodies. And so the hope is that if you're able to really figure out your type of PCOS and work with an approach that finds the root cause of your fertility, that's when this missing piece gets uncovered, and that's when your fertility potential can really open up.
Yeah, that kind of like, oh, can you give me in this case, not a birth control pill, but maybe it could be, but people wanting this magic pill that's going to, fix all of their woes, which is, I guess, sold to us through the pharmaceutical companies. But, then you have all these other side effects from that seemingly magic pill that was not the right thing. And just a lot of it is we've got to go back to the basics of diet and lifestyle changes, which can be simple but not easy. And so what do you see as far as for women that are struggling with PCOS? Anything, some of the biggest mistakes that they could be making?
Some of the biggest mistakes are to not figure out what type of PCOS that you have, and really continuing on in this kind of assembly line medicine, right? Working with a provider who's telling you, well, metformin is the only thing that I can give you. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to send you to a fertility provider. And you know and not to put this saying that you're making a mistake with making that decision, but there are other providers who can look at the more holistic picture for your body, because particularly with PCOS you really need that holistic look to understand, is your gut health leading to fertility issues? And you don't want to be in this one size fits all approach, because that just doesn't work for PCOS. We don't see that. Certainly some women respond well to metformin, right? Metformin was not developed for PCOS originally, but it started being used for it because we do see like, oh, it helps with ovarian function, it helps lower androgens, but not for everyone. And so, if you're stuck in that system of this is the only thing that we have for you, just understand that there are other ways that you can be supporting your body to help open up your fertility. And, Sarah, I love what you were saying about how, we get stuck in that mindset of like, is there a magic pill out there? Because that's easy. But when you take that time and you do it in a specific way to make some lifestyle changes or nutrition changes, like so much more opens up for your life, right? Of course, we're focused on your fertility, but you get better sleep, your mood is more balanced, you just feel just steadier in your life.
Yeah, and just back to the metformin piece. So when would you say because there's many side effects from metformin and it's not right for everyone. Maybe your take of metformin versus berberine, like what are you seeing there and when it would be right? Because I get a lot of questions on that too.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be individualized, of course. It's going to be, you want to kind of look at the level of insulin resistance that's happening. What are blood sugar levels throughout the day? Like, how high are they jumping and crashing? And then also, how quickly is somebody wanting to get pregnant? And how determined are they to make the changes in that time frame? And so, taking those pieces together, then we can figure out, okay, how soon do we start metformin? But we're always starting metformin alongside other changes at gut health, number one, and focusing on some fertility specific nutrition changes. And then berberine can be incredibly helpful as well. that would be for somebody who isn't having quite as high of insulin resistance and might have like a little bit different timeline for their fertility.
Because metformin can have a lot of like digestive issues and other, like, what are some of the side effects people to look for?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is going to be the digestive side effects. So, loose stools, diarrhea, stomach cramping, that's going to be the biggest thing. And that's one of the biggest reasons why women are like, no, thank you, don't want to take that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Being able to work on things in a more functional or, holistic way to
Yeah.
get to those, to get to the missed healing opportunities instead of just like patching away. Maybe now would you, so could it be like a short-term thing then perhaps, or not even?
For the metformin and the
Yeah.
berberine.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sometimes it's just needed to help get the body kind of regulated, reminded of what it should be doing naturally. And then with the other additions that we're doing and other support, then we can, back off on the metformin and just allow the body to be working as it should.
And so someone has PCOS and is looking to conceive, what are some strategies that where would you start?
So, the number one most important step is to figure out what type of PCOS you have. And again, that's so important because then that leads you forward on a very targeted treatment plan for your specific fertility. And then another thing that's very important is to make sure that the doctor or provider that you're working with is the right one for you. And because PCOS is is a syndrome, it can be complex with all these different pieces. Not all providers are skilled to be working with it. And when you want to get pregnant, you want to be working with someone who really knows how to put these pieces together for your body.
And then, so how do we figure out that? So you talked about the different types, but how do we as a layman figure that out? Or is we as a layman figuring out or layperson, is that even possible?
Yeah, there are certainly lots of quizzes out there that you can take. Sometimes you don't know how reliable they are. And because of the high importance of getting that individualized care for PCOS, I recommend talking with somebody who can help you figure out your type. It's very common to be a mix of two or all of them. And so you really want to have a conversation with somebody who can help you really identify what's happening in your body.
And so, what are some diet and lifestyle supplement recommendations for someone to start?
Talking about fertility, some of the most important foundational things are going to be like probiotics, getting in lots of good fermented foods in the diet, focusing on foods that are more easily absorbable, like with breads, a sourdough long fermented bread is going to be a lot better on the digestive system than other types of breads. Omega 3s are really important for the body. They're to prepare for pregnancy, and they're also one of the most anti inflammatory things that we can put inside our bodies. And there's supplement forms of that. And then you can find omega 3s through food sources like flaxseed and salmon. And then vitamin D is really important as well. For so many of us, we're deficient in vitamin D because, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and it's raining, 8 months out of the year. And yeah, and so, we see there's a correlation with vitamin D levels and positive pregnancy outcomes. And then also helps with mood and immune system. Awesome. And so, those three things would be something that would, really important to get on board as a foundation getting started.
And what's your take on having people go gluten free? I've had gluten free sourdough bread, and that's really yummy. So, what's your take on going gluten free, dairy free, and doing elimination diet and that piece?
Yeah, so eliminating toxins is one step in my PCOS fertility protocol. And, so we want to look at kind of the toxic load of your body and understand what's happening, how much inflammation is going on, how much is that contributing to infertility. So, within that, for many patients, not everyone, We do an elimination diet because you want to see, are there foods that are contributing to that inflammation, lowering your gut health? And if somebody is not reacting to dairy or gluten, then I don't typically recommend it just as a broad statement to avoid those foods in general. But because we're working on fertility and that inflammatory piece is so big, I always recommend eating the forms of gluten or dairy that are more easily absorbable and more easily digested. So with breads, the sourdough, or at least like a long soaked grain. And then with dairy, the lacto fermented, so yogurts and kefirs, those kinds of things, just to support the body. But again, it's just on an individual basis.
Are you doing testing included in your protocol then too?
Yep, a variety of stool testing, and then looking at different hormone levels. Of course, reproductive hormones, and then looking at other hormones, thyroid, cortisol, those things.
And what about some other lifestyle recommendations too, mindset or anything else you want to get into?
Yeah, so number one, if you're feeling in this place where you're feeling hopeless and unheard and that nobody really understands what you're going through, you just keep searching out and looking for other providers, different resources for your fertility journey, because they are out there. And it's really frustrating when you feel dismissed, particularly by your doctor, and that can lead you, crying to sleep at night and feeling like your body is broken and like it's going against you. And I understand that. And so just continuing to be determined to reach out, talk to people, talk to providers who are experts in this field to help understand what it is that your body's going through, because there's hope.
Any success stories you want to share with us?
Sure. Yeah. So I had one patient who came into me and was struggling with PCOS, was in the post pill syndrome, had regular periods before being on birth control. And then, of course, after birth control, things were all over the place with her cycles and hormones. And no one had looked at her thyroid levels. And so we tested that, found she had Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune condition of the thyroid. And then we got some key pieces in place for her to help her thyroid. We were supporting her ovulation so that she was able to get regular cycles again, and she was able to identify when she was ovulating, and then she was able to get pregnant.
Awesome. Yeah, we've got many people right now with Hashimoto's that before coming to see us failed IVF cycles, tried naturally for years. And by making those targeted changes, they're pregnant now, and people are like, it's a miracle. And yes, it is a miracle, but also they met their miracle part way. They made the changes, they did the work, and then you see the results. So definitely check out your list there, list of 9 questions to ask your doctor. So you go to drangelapotter.com/PCOS questions. I'll have that in the show notes. Any final thoughts for us today, Dr. Potter?
Just thank you for having me here. And again, if you're feeling like your body is broken, please know that there is hope out there. And if you need somebody to talk to about your specific journey, reach out, schedule a session with me, and we can go over your PCOS type and understand, what's happening with your unique fertility journey to help you just have the best chance at becoming pregnant.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.